Hi there, this is something brand new to me and is inspired by all the other reviewers online who do this kind of thing. So, welcome to a new season of Amiga, Playguides and Reviews. And I don't plan to do this again, so, second of all, I don't think I'm particularly amazing when it comes to the camera, etc. So you might wonder why my videos don't contain swearing, they don't contain much in the way of reviewing, they just basically point out the game. Well, the whole idea of these play guides was basically so that anybody from 8 to 80 could just pick up these games, brand new, and as long as they knew what they were doing, it should be somehow possible for them to pick these games up. And I've reviewed, well, games on the Commodore 64 and on the Amiga. But these reviews are meant to be family friendly, and so swearing isn't part of all that. Basically, I have a son, and if I did something in these videos that I didn't want him to watch, well, that's a bit, well, incongruous is the word, to who I am. So even though I swear in real life, I don't tend to swear in the videos, and I guess the odd shit and all this lot goes in, but you never know. If I do anything off the cuff, I tend to go into a voice over and things like that. I can do several voices, but I'm not very good at doing those on camera. So the Lemon Play Guides are supposed to be an introductory guide. In my opinion of these things, it doesn't really matter to an extent. It's just somebody who's good enough to demonstrate the game, even if that means playing the game through multiple times, which I don't do. Sometimes I have one practice run at a game, but usually it's cold, usually after 20 years away, and that means I can jump into the game without any experience and to introduce the game like it would be if it was my very first time. Hence the play guides. If I was a professional at these games, I'd say yes, do this and that. But I've noticed professional gamers playing these things, they move through these games so quickly, it boggles the mind. I was watching one the other day from Sparkle on the Lemon Amiga website, and he flew through Great Kiana Sisters at lightning speed, and it baffled my mind. It actually put me off playing the game because he made it look so easy. So I tried to present a kind of layman's guide. If I practice these things, obviously it would be more professional. But at the same time, if these games aren't pick up and play, then, you know, sometimes they are just too hard. And that's important to remember. If they're still too hard after all this time, they're probably still too hard. But, so that was the idea behind the Lemon Amiga play guides and the reviews. I don't actually run the Lemon Amiga website, or Lemon Commodore 64 website, as some people may think. I joined the scene quite a few years ago, but quite late actually, and we'll go through my history and might as well on this video, because we're probably never going to do it again. I'm quite nervous, as you can see, but hopefully we'll get through this thing somehow. Relax, relax, treat like mad chat. That's what you need to do. And so, my history with the Amiga, I guess it started in 1990, I think it was. It could have been 1991. I had a Commodore 64 and I begged my mum, pleaded my mum for an Amiga, and it was November, and before this I said to my mum, no, I'm not bothered about an Amiga, I've seen these things, they're not amazing, they're not very special, I have hundreds of thousands of games on my Commodore 64, I'm not buying an Amiga, I'm not interested. And then, lo and behold, a few weeks before Christmas, my best friend at the time got an Amiga, and that didn't initially blow my mind. The first game he put on was Apprentice, which is a very kind of low budget platformer, and then the second game he put on was Lemmings, and I thought, well, the graphics in Lemmings are pretty special, but it's nothing the Commodore 64 couldn't do, and lo and behold, they did actually release Lemmings on the Commodore 64. But the third game, it must have been 1990, was Lotus Esprit Turbo Challenge. And I'm wearing the t-shirt at the moment, the Lemon Amiga t-shirt. And I have actually got one signature on the t-shirt, which is probably impossible to see above Dizzy there. And the, well, I actually have a zoom. Let's see if we can zoom in on this. That signature is actually by Andrew Morris. So, above Dizzy there, and that's Test Drive 2. And Andrew Morris's car is actually that one, which he didn't actually sign. But anyway, enough of my Adam's apple, let's get back to the story. And I saw Lotus Esprit Turbo Challenge blown away by those graphics, the smoothness, the sound, the wood effect basically. You wouldn't believe the wood effect on Lotus was the very thing that said, I want Amiga. And that's why Andrew Morris, if it wasn't for Andrew Morris's wood effect, wood paneling on Lotus and Supercars 2 and all the rest of it, if it wasn't for that, I wouldn't have nagged my mum to get an Amiga the week before Christmas. And I got an Amiga 500 with boxes and boxes of games. Most of those were copies. And if you remember in those days, there's a flip-up box, and you just flip through those copies, beep, 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 all the way to the back. And they're all hand-drawn labels, all written in, and maybe with a marker, Chaos Engine, you know, all the rest of it. Shadow of the Beast. In fact, I don't know anyone who had Shadow of the Beast on the original, but everybody had Beast 1 and 2 on the copy. Very strange, but then again, sometimes buying copies meant I would buy the original game. It was good enough. Sometimes it prevented me from buying games originally which were absolutely not very good, like Apprentice, which I never bought. But in with this pack came a range of games. I remember Italia 90 was in that pack. Italia 90, US Gold, great music, but the gameplay left a lot to be desired. But it must have been around 1990 Christmas time when I got my pack, and it came with Batman pack. Batman the movie, one of my favourite films, one of my favourite games ever. You may have seen the recent review. So, New Zealand Story, which I didn't really like at the time, but after playing that in the Lemon Amiga competition, I actually progressed in that game amazingly enough to get through and do an actual competent review. I mean, imagine if I'd played New Zealand Story and only got to the first level and said, there you go, that's how you play New Zealand Story. Sometimes it takes something like an Amiga competition, battling against 16 and 20 other competitors, to force someone to really appreciate the game and to bring out all the sides of the game that you only get after so long. It's like Soccer Kid. The levels are repetitive, but you see the train level and all the other amazing levels later on, and the bosses and the great music on the Russian level. It's only because you've got so far in the game that you can really appraise it, I find. So I try to be competent in my playing ability. But anyway, getting back to the story, after I got my first Amiga with all the copied games and some of the originals, I started to buy originals, got all the magazines, in which you can see some behind still original. See Amiga Buyer's Guide 94, I'm late. Commodore 64, probably 1992. I can't get these out because they're in this display. The Amiga Workbench, that obviously needs no introduction. Zap 64, that Zap is actually from my icon. Zap 64 there with the truck icon on the thing. The other one is the Zoo Amiga lady behind me. And I haven't got too many magazines still knocking around, but I still have this Ace magazine from 1992, March 1992, which had Shadowlands on the front cover and Arcade 4-pack with Commander Key. Oh wow, the VJ-EJ version. That's something amazing. Something amazing. So, well, these games I still have I mean, look at the amazing games that we never got on the Amiga that appeared on the PC. It's, well, you can probably see these screenshots. Anyway, back to my Amiga story. I eventually subscribed to Amiga Power, Amiga Format, CU Amiga, all the usual Amiga magazines. I was a big Commodore Format fan. Commodore Format in the UK for the 64. Zap, of course. I was still on subscription for a long time. And I bought Ace and Amiga Action and all the other Amiga magazines. But I decided that I wasn't particularly happy with my Amiga 500, so a few years later I decided to look at upgrade options. In those days, basic Amiga 500, there wasn't much in the availability of upgrades, but it was possible. It was actually possible. So, I don't know anybody out there who's actually heard of a Bodega Bay, but the Bodega Bay was actually an add-on plugged into the side port of an Amiga. I don't actually have any Amigas right now. That's another story I might go into later on. That plugged into the side port, where the PCM CIA port is on the 1200. That was actually expansion port on the 500, big chunky thing. Zorro 1 and Zorro 2 slot, it plugged into that. And behind the Bodega Bay was a box, like a big box Amiga. And in there you could plug in Zorro 2 cards. So I had this, suddenly a big box Amiga with a keyboard in front, big box behind, and in there I had Zorro cards, a SCSI card, an ID card, to run SCSI and ID hard drives. I had both running in there at the same time. I also had a CD-ROM, one of the first guys ever to get a CD-ROM in this massive big block. And this was in the days when the Amiga 2000 ruled, and the Amiga 3000 hadn't appeared. The Amiga 600 and the 500 Plus hadn't quite appeared, and so it was basically A500 time or nothing. This was way before AGA. So I got this big box Amiga with a CD-ROM, and the only games that were out there available for the CD-ROM at that time were public domain collections and things on magazine cover discs. And I don't mind telling you that CU Amiga decided to release a range of CDs on their magazine cover discs, and that made me absolutely love the fact that I had a CD-ROM and fish disc collections and all the rest of it. It was kind of worth it in those days, but you know, it was very much pioneer technology with a ×2 CD-ROM, which was actually amazing. But I had this big box Amiga, and I expanded the kickstart from 1.3 up to 2.04, and then up to 3.1 when that came out with the kickstart splitter. I had my original 1.3 ROM, and then I split off the two 3.1 ROMs, and I could switch with the keyboard, so I had the full range of kickstarts. I also expanded the CPU on the Amiga 500, which was unheard of at the time. I bought something called a Derringer board. Wow, an all-30, 25 megahertz Derringer board, and this thing plugged into the CPU slot. Inside Amiga 500 there is a CPU slot with lots and lots of pinholes. You basically take out the brick of the CPU and stick that onto this board, and on this board was an FPU, 25 megahertz, and there was a CPU on all-30, 25 megahertz, and actually changed the chip, the crystal on that thing, to a 50 megahertz crystal. So I had an all-30 50 megahertz rated FPU, you know, whatever. It also came with a side expansion card slot for memory, and I think 64 megabytes went into that thing. Could have been 128, but I'm pretty sure it was 64 on an Amiga 500, don't forget. And so I had an Amiga 500 all-30 25 megahertz FPU, 66 megabytes of RAM, and CD-ROM and SCSI card and ID on the workbench. So I was pretty much kitted out. The only thing I didn't have at that time was a monitor, and I got a monitor a bit later on. But this power station basically consumed half of the power of a PC. At that time you're looking at EGA, CGA graphics, and VGA was just taking off, nothing like Super VGA of course. And I remember games at the time, I had an equivalent to a 386 PC in an Amiga 500, and I remember F18 Inceptor, when I plugged that in with the 030 with the caches on, the data burst and everything else, flew out of my computer, and that was amazing technology. Don't forget, coming from a Commodore 64 background, we were used to blocks that looked like that, as big as that, on the screen. And you were a block, and you had to jump on top of blocks, and you land on top of more blocks, and jump on top of blocks. And the Amiga was not blocky, it was completely opposite. In fact, F18 Inceptor is one of the blockiest. In fact, that's a vector game, but it's still got chunky graphics. The rest, take a look at any 3D flight simulator like Star Glider 2, it's not as blocky and it's faster as well. Anyway, we're there with this Bodega Bay and this massive expansion, and the internet, that was the next thing. I needed the internet. In those days, they finally discovered a 28.8k per second modem, and that revolutionized history. 28.8k per second, that's nothing. And that was eventually superseded by 33.3 and then 56k per second modem, which I still have actually in the back room to this day, my original 56k snail's pace modem. And in those days, web pages were basically like Wikipedia is now, very basic, text driven. You might get one or two small pictures in every one. And using my Amiga, I produced web pages for the internet in those infant days, including one which has survived to this day, called the Weight Training and Bodybuilding Guide. Now, anybody who has eyes in their head will be able to see that I am not very muscular in the weight training and bodybuilding department. And that's basically because I used to be very good at it, but not anymore. So I'm the opposite to Arnold Schwarzenegger. He started off like that and went like that. And I started off like that and went a bit like that, and then ended up back flat again. So anyway, I went through that. I'm very knowledgeable, but because I'm naturally thin, I didn't get very big, I just get very strong. And so I used to walk around very much strong, a big fat neck, big muscles, and I wrote a bodybuilding guide. And in those days, with very few internet pages around, I had a web counter on that thing, and within a number of years I had over 1 million views. And that wasn't hard in those days because there wasn't much else to look at. So the web counter eventually broke on that website, so I've no longer any idea of views. It could be 2, 3, 5 million. I've seen that website in so many years, it's still there somewhere. But from there, it actually said on made on the Amiga. Still on there. Built, made, coded by code on the Amiga using, what did I use in those days? Apart from Ed, of course, there was Transwrite Junior, which I used, which was a text editor, and things like that. I think I wrote it on Transwrite. So eventually they released Amiga 1200s, I got a couple of those and a monitor, thanks to a friend of mine. So I need to backtrack in the story. In those days, before web pages and while all this was going on with the body guide and, you know, the web that we know today, there were such things as bulletin board services, BBS. And where I live, in Lancashire, there were quite a few. All you need to do is dial up at local rate, and you could dial through to a message board where you could chat and post files and play games and very primitive stuff, a bit like teletext. Basically, only through your computer. You used to come up pages of information, you can type those things in. The bulletin board that I joined was called Dave's Place BBS in Manchester, actually from Ashton-under-Lyne. And Dave Buckley, who I still know to this day, not really much contact with, but still friends, and he used to run the Dave's Place and I used to run it with him. And we got to chat and all this and that, and basically he donated 2 Amiga 1200s and a monitor and the CD-ROM expansion and hard drives and everything, and he packed up the BBS in favour of the internet. And so that was very expensive in those days, dialing up a BBS at a local rate, and an hour in those days would cost £1. And my mother wasn't very happy with the phone bill. But the internet, wow, I had the internet on an Amiga with Miami, with Miami connection thing, and I had something called a squirrel expansion, which meant I could plug in the internet and it went as fast, as slow as that thing would ever go. So I was tooled up basically. I had the utilities on Workbench, I had various workbenches, I had the games installed as much as possible. In fact, that was before WHD load and all the rest of it taken for granted these days. In fact, I can't even remember. There was something called Tude, the ultimate degrader, which was meant to run Amiga games on a hard drive with variable success. Forget the predecessor to WHD load, but there was one. Some games could be installed. Indiana Jones, for example. Most of the arcade adventures, the box adventures, the point and clickers could be installed on hard drives. So Monkey 2 and Beneath the Steel Sky and Future Wars, I think, not quite sure, but they were on there anyway, all the ones, Lure of the Temptress, on the hard drive. So I thought it was pretty good, and I was messing around with Octobed at the time, making a few sound music tracks, semi-competently, messing around with all kinds of things. Animation, I created a 10-minute long animation based around the Mr. Ben cartoon, which was an animated cartoon thing in the UK. Mr. Ben meets Star Trek, and it was very good, but it was about 8 discs long, made on D-Pen 3, with samples from Mr. Ben and Star Trek, speech bubbles and animated storyline, pretty much like the Lemon 64 reviews at the moment, but I'm afraid that got lost over the years. Well, that was amazing, but I was doing all things like that. So it was a multimedia machine, and I actually won an award at school for my programming on Commodore 64. I actually programmed at the end of secondary school my own text-based adventure, and I wrote a book based around that, and I submitted that for my GCSEs, and that secured me a C rating GCSE. Wow. But trying to do that on the Amiga was somehow difficult. Basically, BASIC wasn't as accessible as it was on the C64, so I programmed myself a basic text adventure around a holiday where the person had to travel to different hotel rooms and swim in the swimming pool and things like that on a Spanish holiday, and that text adventure never saw the light of day because without graphics it looked pretty terrible. But I had all the range. I had public domain discs, Fred Fish discs, PD soft discs featuring the Walker animation and Amy versus Walker and all the Eric Schwartz discs, the whole range. So I had the whole collection eventually, machine after machine after machine. And unfortunately, I ended up getting married, and the Amigas went on the back shelf. We had a son, we had a business, we had nursery to think about, and commuting to London to think about, and this and that, and cars and travel and all the rest of it, Glastonbury. And Amigas were sold, unfortunately, and that was all put away as the past. And that brings us up virtually to the present day, when maybe, I don't know, 5 years ago, I happened to be browsing on the Lemon Amiga website, and I decided to write a review. That led to another review and another review, and a couple of years down the line I introduced myself on the forum, and I ended up being a member of the forum and playing in the International Games competition. Very fine Amiga based competition, which I'm still actually proud to be a member of, and I'm actually running these days, co-running that with 2 other guys. So I do run that part of the Lemon Amiga website, well, I do. But it took me a long time before I started doing the Lemon Amiga reviews, and that opportunity came through because a YouTube channel was created for Lemon Amiga, and the offer went out, would you like to create a video on the Lemon Amiga? And at the time it was supposed to be a channel where we could place all our Lemon Amiga competition scores, and a guy was very interested in inserting videos of his favourite games. Just trying to think of the name, which is obvious, but it will come back to me eventually. But Prince of Persia, that's right, he wanted to do a Playguides Prince of Persia game, which I'm not very good at. And that was my excuse to create the very first Amiga Playguides and the reviews, which got off to a shaky start. And the first game was The Settlers, very much like Mat Chat, The Settlers. Very good game, but the voice wasn't in sync particularly, and because of the 15-minute rule in those days, the review, it's good review, but I only put half of the things that I wanted to put in there. I didn't cover half of the things, like joining paths together with an enemy and trading across the border and things like that, which I recorded later on, but that got ruined because I tried to do it live like this, and so all those Settlers tips are still waiting. The second review was Batman the Movie, my favourite game of all, and in those days I was quite, well, I might come across as very upfront and very, this is me. In those days, of course, I was quite shy. I still am, to be honest. There's nothing wrong with that. And that's how I appeared in the Playguides. So I wanted to be very friendly, as I am, but of course I wanted to introduce these games, wanted to play the games, and over the years the Playguides have gone like this in popularity, and my time's gone like this. Hopefully the standards have gone like this, but the hours have of course gone like this as well. And if I had still been married, I wouldn't be able to do all this. It takes so many hours, you know, not every hour of the day, but you know, several hours go into these every day for a week, and by the end of a week there's something there that's viewable. And oftentimes I mess up. Sometimes I begin to narrate a guide and I get the dates wrong, and I get this wrong and that wrong, and what am I talking about? That's a lot of rubbish. So the voiceovers tend to be choppy, and I might be saying something and then it cuts into something else. And I had a comment, why are your voiceovers very choppy? Why do you stop and start like that? It's very annoying. Yes, I know. I'm the guy that made those, and I'm Mr. Perfectionist, so how annoying do you think it is for me? I agonise over bits and pieces of these reviews, and every single review has a bug in it. In the Batman the Movie review, it sounds like I'm burping in the driving section. When I'm introducing at the very end, I think I fling the bat rope out towards the Joker, and I say something else and it sounds like a burp. Basically, that wasn't in there in the edit, and I didn't have time to go back and fix that. But basically, there's a burp and a blunder in every single one, and half of the facts I discover are slightly not quite correct, and people have written in to me, even the makers themselves, and said, actually your facts aren't very correct. You know, great review, but great research, but not quite. And of course, I'm not in contact with any of these guys. So when Jamie Woodhouse contacted me and said, your ATR review was great, but there's so many facts in there that was slightly inaccurate, I wrote back and said, get in touch immediately, I want to know. Because basically, I had already recorded the Nitro review just recently, and I wanted his feedback on Nitro. Unfortunately, Jamie Woodhouse did not reply to my plea of help on there, and so those little mistakes on every review continue. So I try not to stick my neck too far out, because of course it's already too long as it is. And I try not to be the big I am, because I'm not. So a few things about me, and I do go out to play events, and I've just come back from the Play Blackpool event, which was very good. I got there on the Monday. Play Blackpool, always worth going to, chatting to all those guys. I wrote a full write-up, well, a bit of a diary of that account on the Lemon Amiga website. But it was great to chat to the Amiga guys there and the maker of the Amiga Years movie. But I noticed that I'm a bit distant in crowds, and so crowds make me feel like, well, like an outsider. So I'm great one-to-one, and I'm great, well, sometimes 3 is a crowd, any more than 3, and I tend to, I'm not a very sticky out chest kind of guy anymore anyway. I mean, many guys in this field struggle to get girlfriends. What are you into? Oh, I'm into 8-bit retro computers. Oh yeah, really? What else? Oh, I'm into Formula 1. I like Ayrton Senna. Oh yeah, really? What else? Oh well, I like old movies, like Jimmy Stewart, and you know, all the classic guys from the 1930s and 40s. Oh, really? Jimmy Cagney, all the rest. Really? So I tend to be on my own a lot, and that means I make up my own entertainment, and that means I play games and things like that. But I also have to make ends meet as a video editor, and I edit videos for YouTube for other guys, and I edit all kinds of videos. If you type in UT Shaman, shamanic website, I've produced every single video for that guy. That pays the rent. I produce videos for guys for all over the world. I'm working for a guy in Australia at the moment. It's only $100 for 1 week's work, but that's probably like 60 quid. But $100, well, it you know, keeping the wolf from the door. And people say, that brings me to a point, Patreon. People say, well, why don't you sign up to Patreon like Matt Chat and Rob Plays? Well, I checked it out and it felt a bit like a bit of a, so I didn't bother. Basically, it would be nice to get funding for this, so obviously if I had funding I'd be spending 48 hours a day doing it, but I don't, so I can't. And that's a shame, but on the other hand, well, I don't know. Maybe I don't have the confidence to go out there and interview guys. You may have seen I've interviewed some guys at Blackpool already, but so, well, Novabug was at Blackpool already. Novabug saw me and I saw Novabug, and we didn't say a word to each other, basically, because what can you say? Well, he interviewed the Oliver twins, I interviewed the Oliver twins. I wanted to get a word in before he did, and that was that. Basically, I couldn't wait to get out of there. I'm pretty damn embarrassed to say, hi Oliver twins, I've completed all your games. Oh, I've completed them all, yeah. So, it doesn't really come naturally to me. But at least I have a sense of humour. So that virtually brings me up to the present date. The guides, we're on now season 3, and this time we'll have a theme to the guides, which will be time travel. And not all the games fit in with this, but if you take Nitro for example, which I've already highlighted already, then, well, we're taking a look at Nitro, and in that game we look at the future. It's a future game. We drive and things like that. So there'll be games based on the past and games based on the future. But one of those, none of those games will be Back to the Future, because those games are terrible. And I'll actually be featuring Back to the Future 1 on the Commodore 64 channel, but 2 and 3. So that's what's coming up, 44 shows. Something else. Why do you produce 44 shows in one go? Wouldn't it be so much easier just to do 12? Well, I like shows that have lots and lots of episodes. And when you think of great shows from the past, Magnum PI, I don't know, Minder, Moonlighting, I don't know, shows from the past, Battlestar Galactica, they always had lots and lots and lots of episodes. And there were very few shows around. The young ones, Faulty Towers, they only had 6. So I thought, well, out of 5,000 Amiga games, if only 10% of those are any good, it will still take me the next 50 years to cover them all, unless I cover maybe 40 at a time. So, like last year, I'll probably take a break after the first 20 for a couple of weeks, give everybody a break, and then it doesn't become too boring, and then we'll do the next 20 odd, 24, and we'll do it like that. I mean, 24 gets away with 24 episodes, so, and it also means you've got something to look forward to every week. Why now? Well, we're producing these now because it's now the Amiga's 30th anniversary. When I'm recording this, it's actually not, but by the time you see this, it will be. So, happy birthday Amiga! Woo! 30 years! 30 years! And I was part of that scene for at least, well, 24 years of those. So, they're having great celebrations in America. I've actually been in contact with the guys running the event in America, and the Amiga 30 event is going to have a special Lemon Amiga section in there with Lemon Amiga themes, and I've set them in a number of games, and hopefully they will have multiplayer tournaments. And my idea was to set up maybe a 4-way Super Skid Marks, an 8-way Super Skid Marks, maybe at least a 2-way Stunt Car Racer, a 2-way Lotus 2. You can have multiple, I mean, imagine 8-way or 4-way Dyna Blaster, 5-way, whatever. Link all these Commodores up, play all these games. So hopefully there'll be a special Lemon Amiga section at the Amiga 30 in America. And again, I'm not Kim Lemon. I don't run Lemon Amiga. In fact, I don't even know where Kim Lemon is. But he's out of the scene. He got a family, and so the Amiga scene took a backseat. And so, yeah, the Amiga events, you might have seen the Amiga events 2015 video. I haven't sold out. I did see the comment that said sold out. I haven't sold out because that implies I'm actually getting some money. And I sell my time in exchange for money. Well, I didn't get any money for that. I talked to the guy that runs the Play Expo events, and so I get a free press pass for those. but that's kind of freebie. I advertise various events for people, I advertise various Kickstarters for people, including the Amiga Use Kickstarter Anthony Nicola Caulfield, which I'm right on, and that will appear, well, early next year, maybe Christmas time. So I'm in contact with guys around the world in the Amiga scene. I've talked to various heroes. Some people might recall I even interviewed Dave Haney once for the Lemon Amiga channel, Insights on Future Technology. If you type that into Google, you'll find it. Everything that Dave Haney said is still bang on the money. Even now, we're still nowhere near it. So, you know, it's been great. So, someone who's actually quite shy and introverted and doesn't drink, something that me and Andrew Morris share, who's actually drinking Coke in the video, and I don't drink either. I smoke, but I don't drink, so everybody has one vice. But the scene is very interesting, and what's going on this year is very interesting. And imagine wall-to-wall Lemon Amiga, Lemon Commodore 64 reviews. I have the interview behind the scenes with the Oliver twins. I have the top 50 greatest Amiga races of all time, which was supposed to be released last year, but last Christmas, and that got delayed. So I have ripped 80% of the footage for that, but that's why you won't see many driving games in Season 3. Not that driving games have much to do with the past and the future, except for bump and burn, which I'm no good at, which is a shame. But we might get around to covering that at a later point. Why don't I take requests? Well, I have taken requests. People have donated vast sums of money. Well, sums of money anyway. And I thought, well, yeah, what do you like? I'll review your game. And fine, you know. Again, I don't want to sell out and become corporate in doing this. Plus, when I took over the job, the agreement was I wouldn't make any money out of the Lemon Amiga videos because the Lemon Amiga is nothing to do with me. And I can't cash in on the back of a name. So even though it says Lemon Amiga on every single one of these episodes, I don't want to rip anybody off. So that's yet another reason. But if people want to contribute anything privately to Dan's Resources, which I am, self-employed. My name is Dan's Resources because all my income comes from all kinds of things. All kinds of things, including selling things on eBay and doing all kinds of things to make ends meet. Basically, in my life, I've never had any money to do anything except for this year. This year I've actually had enough money to walk into a supermarket without having to count every penny. So it's not as bad as it was. At least I'm not fighting to keep a roof over my head. So this town where I live is notorious for idiots, and because I've been kind of cursed with a high IQ, I don't like to boast about, I find idiots to be a drag. So there's no entertainment around here at night after the pubs have closed because of idiots, so I have to make up my own entertainment. And that generally means I'm playing games until maybe 11 PM, and I'll switch that off and put on a classic Hollywood movie. And anything created before 1970, 1980, I don't mind. I don't mind most films from most eras, and I could go on mastermind about the history of motion pictures, but perhaps I wouldn't get anywhere, so there's no point doing that. I'm not really 100% clued up on the Amiga scene. A lot of my knowledge comes from research that I do at the time, but it's surprising that research actually sticks. So if people ask me about the same thing, I'll probably be able to regurgitate it further down the line. But sometimes I even have to break off reviews while I do a bit of research or while I remember a name, and then carry on. And then that leads to a jump in the narration, which is highly annoying. I try to balance everything out. Anyway, the time and the effort is worth it, because I get to put these games out onto the internet, and as time passes there are a few of us doing it, so you've got to think, I was once told, if you want something happening in the world, well, why don't you do it? Nobody else is going to do it, nobody else is going to be bothered, why don't you do it? Alright then. So I'm doing quite a lot. I'm into all these things. I'm a hero behind a keyboard, but not really face to face. So that's me, that's my life, that's Lemon Amiga, that's my Amiga history potted into a video, and God knows how long it's going to take to upload this. But again, I'll try to keep things funny and entertaining for you guys, and even now I'm putting on a voice. Obviously I don't want to speak in my native Lancashire voice and talk to you all like that, because it'll sound pretty shit really, and all that. And so obviously you do put on kind of a voice, but then this is my real voice I'm speaking to you now. But I do emphasise that when I'm doing the reviews, so it comes out a bit bigger than actual life. And as I say, I can do all kinds of voices, and we'll probably get onto a voice special at some point, because I like to do voice sound effects from games, like stage clear, ice cream, and all the rest of it. And I've recently created a homage to the Luke Holzer channel. I don't know if anybody's seen Luke Holzer, but I do follow quite a number of channels, including Rob Ply's channel in Australia. I'm not doing a very great thing live on camera, as I didn't think I would do, but basically the Luke Holzer review, Luke Holzer, Playguides and the reviews, Commodore 64 and the Amiga, so fake. And his reviews tend to be full of smoking and swearing, completely the opposite to what I intend to do. But Witchfinder, with his packaging and Mastertronic, I'll have the Witchfinder reviews. I think he's very, well, not very funny, but entertaining. And other guys like that, AVGN and things like that. So I do follow people around the internet and do download and watch all the Amiga Zeustas, people like that, all the Amiga reviews and all the Commodore 64 reviews, mostly the ones that are narrated, so if it's a review out there I will have seen it. And yeah, that's, I relax by watching a Luke Holzer play guide and review to Elite Dangerous, and I've actually created a number of Elite Dangerous guides myself, which I'll link you to in the description. But that was a link to a future project perhaps, when I get to play some of my favourite PS and PS2 games. The Life Schools reviews will, well, that YouTube channel will be that. And I get to play all my great PS2 games again, that'd be terrific. And of course Steve Benway, and playing games badly. He's already played Black and great games on the PS2 already. I want to do that myself. Have a go. But that's for the future. Right now I've ripped 44 out of, well, 40 out of the 44 Amiga reviews, and I think I've ripped maybe 20 Commodore 64 reviews, which go on for about 10 minutes each. So it means the format will be a bit more compacted, 10 minutes each, but the Back to the Future review will be about half an hour. And I never got off level 1. But anyway, I hope you enjoy my various channels on my various enterprises, and I'll see you guys again for another review, and all that. And I'll see you guys soon for another Playguides review. Check you guys out soon.